community. And the reason why I like nestjs is that you can start building your app piece by piece. It breaks down your app into these smaller parts called modules, and you can start building your app piece, but you don't have to build everything at the same time to give you an organized way of building your app. So when I'm building my application now, even if there's no payment, I can start with say, okay, let me build the map functionality, let me build the community, let me build the payment. One by one, I'm going to follow these steps. So that's what modules are. And modules are the most important thing. Like, they are basically the building blocks of your application. Modules are the building blocks. Okay, so that's where you start. So when you want to start building, now you ask yourself, this app I am building, what should the app be able to do? Okay, this is what the app can do, right? These are the features that the app has. Okay, each feature now, I'll create one module for each feature. So I'll take you to my computer so where you see how to create a module. So we've looked at modules. Now, the next thing we're going to look at now is something I call controllers. Okay, now a module is kind of like a box, right? So if you look at your app from the top down, you see that your app is made up of boxes. And those boxes are these modules. Now, inside each module, you're going to have something called, inside these modules, you're going to have something called services. You're going to have something called controllers, and there are two. There are modules. So let me just write it down. Right? This is skeleton of the application. There are modules. We're going to look at modules today. We'll look deeply at controllers and services later, right? Because sometimes all of these concepts are intertwined, controllers and services. So don't worry, you don't really need to fully understand controllers and services. We'll do that later, but just understand modules, right? But of course, modules are used to contain controllers and services. Okay, it is a box. The box that represents a feature and that controls and represents a feature and that contains controllers and services. Now, the job of a controller is to create HTTP requests. We'll look at that later. And job of services is to create the business logic. It basically looks at how, okay. Let me make it make sense this way. Now, if a module is a feature like a map, right? Services helps us detail how that map is going to work. Controllers looks at how that map can be delivered. So we all know that this app, right, has something they call a backend. Sorry. Let's say this is a backend, and this backend is a server somewhere. Okay, it's a server somewhere. And you know that your server, remember that the job of the backend is to store information and kind of like manage and deal with information, right? It takes that information to the back end, from the back end to the front. They call it HTTP request. So HTTP. So basically, controllers, they create and they manage HTTP request. Don't mind me. They manage and they control. You create your HTTP request and you manage your HTTP. HTTP request is just basically how the back end talks to the front end. The front end is what you are seeing in your phone. Okay, the front end is what you are seeing in your phone, right? It just displays the information. But how that feature is going to work, it depends on the logic, the business logic you are writing, which is this services here. Okay, I know we're not looking at code now, but just for you to understand the concept and how they work. So services basically are, if you've written JavaScript before, there are methods. There are JavaScript methods you write. We'll look at that, okay? And what services tell you is, how is this map going to work? So for example, modules now tells you what feature is it. Is it a map? Is it a store? Is it a community? Controllers help you manage them, manage how information is taken from the back to the front and from the front to the back, right? And services helps you deal with how it works. Now, one thing about controllers now is that when you are looking at the back end talking to the front end, right, you notice that your application has different types of users. Okay,